Hi everyone, my name is Angela Ochieng. Welcome to another episode of Sharia Clinic. Today I am joined by Irene Baru. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. She's also an entrepreneur. She's the CEO of ApertaCura. She'll tell us more about that. She tells me it's a Latin name. She's also an alumnus of Jasiri Fellow. She'll tell us more about that. She is a trainer of trainers with Stanbic Financial Fitness. Also, under her profile, she has been a legal officer of Metro Logistics. She has also been an associate of Scribe Services. She has run a delivery business called Bike It for 5 years, a whole 5 years. And then she's also a very well sought after and experienced speechwriter. About her schooling, she went to Kenyatta University School of Law. I think I want drum rolls. Woo! Then she's also an alumnus of Kenya High, the Kenya High School in Kileleshwa. So her English is definitely better. Please, Irene, go ahead and tell us more about yourself in maybe 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Angela. As you've heard, Irene is my name. I am the CEO of ApertaCura. I have run businesses before, and I'm very, very passionate about the intersection of business and the law. And I'm very, very happy to be here. What we do at ApertaCura is we're a preventive health company, and we reward people for staying healthy. So we run corporate wellness programs and individual wellness programs, and we motivate people to stay consistent. So on our platform, when you engage in the wellness activities there, you earn points, and then you can redeem these points across a wide network of service providers. So you can get groceries, you can get shopping from some supermarkets and meals. You can check it out on our website, thebiggesthealthchallenge.com, and you can see what we're up to.
That's nice. Do you have an event coming up soon?
Yes, we do. We have several events coming up. We have a mental wellness club that we're launching on the 28th of March at the Nairobi Garage. And everyone watching this is very welcome to join us on that day. And we also have a family wellness festival on the 19th of April at the waterfront.
Karen. Has to be Karen, Kileleshwa.
You know, it has to be the suburbs. Leafy suburbs.
So you chose a very interesting topic, a legal playbook in businesses. Tell us what that is all about before now I start asking questions.
Okay.
When did you choose legal playbook?
Legal playbook. I chose legal playbook because a lot of us get into business to just make ends meet. We don't really consider the legal requirements in a business, and you'll find an entrepreneur running to a lawyer only when they get in trouble. When in real sense, there's a few things that one could have considered at the beginning that will save them a lot of time and money in the later stages of the business. So for me, the legal playbook is just a guide for somebody looking to get into entrepreneurship and wants to know what legal requirements, what legal aspects of it do I look at before I start. Yeah.
So first I'd ask you, what is the right vehicle for anyone who wants to start a business? Probably if I want to start a business, should I start solo as a solo proprietor? Can I do a partnership? Can I do a limited liability company by a guarantee and share? Can it be a public company? So what vehicle will I use if I have the money and I want to start a business today?
Okay. I think for me, what to look at first is the objective of your business and what resources you're working with. So when you look at something like a sole proprietorship is the same as you. So it's Angela operating as a Sharia clinic. So you register it under your name, and it's also tied to your KRA as well. When you come to something like a partnership now is when you want to get into business with somebody else. And I see this with a lot of firms like law firms, accountants, and all of that. But then, partnerships, some have limited liability and some have the liability similar to the sole proprietorship where the partners are personally liable. Yeah. So then we come to something like companies now. The company is a totally different entity from you. It's separate from if Angela opens a company, you're only there as a director, but it's a whole legal person on its own. It can be sued and it can sue. It's not the same for a sole proprietorship. If I do something wrong in my sole proprietorship, I will be sued myself, not the sole proprietorship. So for companies, there's different types. There is a private limited by shares, which is the most common. Then there's a private limited by guarantee, which usually is a form of registration for non-profit organizations that want to go away from the NGO route, because the NGO route also has different regulations. As you can hear, there are so many vehicles you can operate under. And then there's now the public companies. So public companies basically invite members of the public to buy shares. And some are listed
on the stock exchange.
Some are listed on the stock. Yeah, some are listed on the stock exchange.
Maybe 2 examples or 3
in the
companies in Kenya.
Okay. Public companies, I'd say Safaricom is a public company. It issues shares to members of the public. I'd say Equity Bank as well. It does the same. They issued an IPO and members of the public bought
An IPO.
In simple non-legalist terms, it's an invitation to members of the public to buy shares within a company. Yes, so it's the initial invitation for that for members of the public to buy shares.
Is it like an invitation to treaty?
It is, but now, yeah, kind of, yeah. But then now, when a member of the public buys the shares, when you open up those shares to members of the public, then now you become a public company. Yes.
Now, I'd want to ask you the difference between SMEs, large corporations, and startups, the 3. So there's SMEs, startups, large corporations. It's very confusing, and yeah, maybe you can tell us and our viewers.
Okay, so it can be confusing because in Kenya you don't have any provision to register an SME separately, a large corporation, you don't, and a startup. There's not any requirements for you or any provisions for you to register that separately. But then they all happen to fall under the categories we've mentioned before. So it can be an SME is just based on the number of people you employ, the amount of resources an SME and a large corporation, the difference is the number of employees you employ, the resources that you're working with, the goal of the business, and the goal of the business. Okay. That's it. So I'd say small and medium enterprises are enterprises with below 250 employees. They work with limited resources. Small and medium enterprises work with limited resources, and profit is the main goal. So you find that these ones, if they're not operating profitably, you're just running an expensive hobby.
Wow. I want to ask probably Uber, Amazon. Could you talk about them as? Or you can need.
Those ones are not SMEs. They fall under the category of startups, and now they have grown to large corporations over the years, because a large corporation is simply a business that has been there over time and has a more structured, has more resources, has grown to over 250 employees. That's what makes large organizations, and they're mostly they're very, what do you call it, structured and very rigid. Yeah, they have, policies they operate with, it's standard operating procedures, SOPs and such things. But then when you come to a startup is a small version of a repeatable and a scalable business model.
Repeat that, viewers.
So it's the smallest version of a repeatable and scalable business model. So let me break it down. Okay. So the initial goal of a startup is to disrupt a market. Talk about M-Pesa. When M-Pesa came into the market, how are you sending money to people at home? Money orders, you'd have to tell somebody, go to a bank and get your money order there.
There was Western Union. Do you remember Western Union?
Yeah, there was Western Union as well. was Western Union and such things, but then it was not very easy for people to get money transferred to them from abroad, from locally as well. So when M-Pesa came in, it completely disrupted how we interact with a money transfer. So now I am able to use my phone to send money to somebody who is quite far from where I am, and it's instant. So it disrupted the market and how things are usually done. If you talk about something like Uber and the previous taxi hailing services that were available, so you'd go to the street, you stand, then you wait for your Uber, then for your cab. It wasn't even an Uber that time, the yellow ones, the yellow taxi. Then you wait for it, then you stop it, and then you discuss fares and all of that. Now comes in Uber and Bolt and all of these other applications. Now, what do? You go on your phone, you find a cab that's near you, you request for it, you already know the fare. In some instances, you can even bargain. We're not advertising any brands. We're not advertising, but you can bargain even in some instances. So the main differentiator of our startup is it's disruptive.
Can we also talk about Airbnbs? We're in one actually, Lauren.
Yes, actually, and it's a beautiful place. So Airbnb also disrupted now the hotel and the tourism industry, if I may say that. Because initially, if I wanted to go somewhere, I'd have to have found a hotel. And a hotel is expensive. It also comes with its own set of restrictions and whatnot. I can go to a hotel and then they don't allow pets. I can't make noise. I can't eat what I want to eat because either they have a menu or if it's a la carte, it's expensive to pay for, and such things. So Airbnb was also a disruptor in the industry. So when we talk about startups, we are not talking about, when we talk about the difference between a startup and an SME, we're talking about disruption. Disruption in the sense that when I was doing bike kit deliveries, I was not really disrupting anything. I was just doing regular deliveries. So it's just something that I noticed that people needed more of. And then I said, okay, let me get into it. And then I see how that goes. So the main aim for me there was profit.
Okay, so that's an SME.
So that is an SME. Even the resources that I was working with when I was doing bike deliveries were very limited resources. Not to say that startups have more resources. They don't, but they usually fundraise. And investors put money in it, but investors put money in the idea. In an SME...
Reminds me of something when you talk about ideas and the Shark Tank.
Yeah, in the Shark Tank. Yeah. So you usually find that they don't invest in non-disruptive ideas. Like you remember Scrub Daddy, the cleaning sponge thing. Nobody would have thought that they would have invested in that because what do you mean you're investing in kitu ya kuosha vyombo? But then if you watched the pitch for Scrub Daddy, you will notice that it was actually a disruptive product. They were talking about grease removal. They were talking about the ease of cleaning inside utensils and such things. So that's the pitch in the Shark Tank before they became Scrub Daddy, the Scrub Daddy that we know right now. So we need to look at, when you're talking about a startup, you just need to look at the innovation and the disruption in the market that it's creating.
And then afterwards, it grows now into a large corporation.
Yeah, now it grows into a larger corporation and it continues to disrupt it as it goes. So most startups, you find that their model is to innovate, keep innovating and keep going. And SME and large corporations is to maintain that profit-making model.
They maintain also the status quo.
Yeah.
We just had to make profits.
Yeah, we are not doing
those complacent.
Yes, our expansion is going into a different market, like when we are talking about SMEs and large corporations, expansion just means I'm opening another store. I've employed more people. I've bought more capital. I've invested more capital to do something. That's just it. But then I think the one thing that Kenyans especially we fail to differentiate and to do is to consider now changing how things are usually done. We usually copy more than we try to change how things are done.
That's a call for all of us. Yes. Yeah. We can move on swiftly to another question. Probably someone is wondering, what are the documents needed to start a business, to register a private limited company?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And go ahead and tell us more.
So I find that private limited companies are usually the best vehicles to run businesses with. And I say, when we say vehicle, we just mean an entity that you have created to conduct the activities that you want to do under your business, right? So I find that a private limited company is the best way to do that, because first you're able to separate yourself from the business, and you're also able to, you see, when you do a sole proprietorship, it's very hard for you to separate me and the business. We are one. So when you do a private limited company, it allows you to leave the entity to grow on itself, and it can run without you being there. And in case, God forbid, that you pass on, the company can still continue to run without you being there. I don't think there's a law for this, but when you pass on in a sole proprietorship, it means that the business ceases to exist, right? Yeah. So when you're registering a private limited company, and likely all the other forms of business, you will need some documentation. For a sole proprietorship, just your personal documents. For the rest of the businesses, you need memorandum of association and articles of association. This is
Tell us what's the difference.
Yes. So the memorandum of association is how the business interacts with the outside world. So the name of the business and its objectives. Then the articles of association is basically the constitution of the company and how things are done within the company. So in Kenya, you find that during registration, there's something called model articles of association. A lot of us, when we go to the cyber cafe, we were saying this earlier about how anybody can register a company. So when you go to the cyber cafe, they tell you, hii kitu ni rahisi, tutafanya sahi. We don't need a lawyer. No, why pay? Why pay and you can do it yourself? So they usually adopt for you the model articles of association because they won't help you draft or tailor them to your company. But I think
the risk in that, just downloading
and
using
yeah,
as is.
The risk is that first you don't even know what your company constitution looks like. A lot of the time when you go and get that company registered somewhere else, they won't give you a copy of the model articles of association. They'll just actually give you, they'll just finish the registration process, and then they'll tell you to wait until it's registered and you can download the certificate. So they won't even tell you what that is. So first you don't know. You don't know how your company's constitution looks like. You're not able to tailor anything to the needs of your company. So, for example, things to do with shareholding and the decisions of shareholders, you don't get to tailor how you want your decision-making processes to look like. You don't get to tailor how you want your processes for appointment of directors to look like. So that's the danger with it. And I'd advise that if you're actually trying to register a company, get a lawyer.
Yes, get a lawyer. We are advocates. Yes, get a lawyer.
Get a lawyer because they will tell you about those articles and memorandum of association. They will help you with structuring your shares. A lot of people just say, I'm registering a company. Nimeweka 100 shares of 1,000 shillings each. You haven't considered how much capital you've put in. You've not considered future capital injections and such things. So just get a lawyer to advise you at the beginning. Because when you do that, you're saving yourself the money that you would have spent now to get them to, represent you when things come crashing or when shit hits the fan, for lack of a better word. Then you have documents that are now not requirements for registration.
About the shareholders agreement, what is that?
Yeah, that's the documents that they're not really required for registration with the BRS, Business Registration Service, but then they are very key documents, especially when you're trying to run a business with other people. So there are instances of people starting a business with someone, and then down the line, because human relationships are human relationships, you fall out. And then now you're left fighting. You are removed as a director or a shareholder. You don't even know. You think you have a company. Then one day you're looking at your eCitizen and you realize, it's no longer appearing on my eCitizen. So what is happening? So shareholders agreements and founders agreements for startups now are usually agreements that determine how you relate as shareholders or co-founders in a business. So basically, it just sets out your dispute resolution mechanisms. It talks about like the shareholders agreement, how you're doing your disputing shares and the share contributions the capital contributions that are determining how you're distributing and allotting the shares. Then you need to have in your founders agreement a termination clause and your shareholders agreement, like how you will separate or how you will resolve your disputes. So either dispute resolution, something that guides you on when you've hit an impasse, then what next? What happens next? So we find that people don't usually think that these documents are necessary at all, until you realize that the person you're trying to work with either is not paying up for their shares, is not doing what you agreed that they would be doing, and now you want out and you don't know how you can separate and continue running the business. So these two documents are basically just to safeguard the founders and the shareholders and to make sure that everybody's interest is secured.
And when you talked about the founders agreement and the shareholders agreement, something came to mind and probably can tell us. We have seen, and this is also in the public domain, Nakumat falling, we have seen Tuskys falling, we have seen Modern Coast and other big companies falling. And probably can tell us, was it because it was a founders? I'm just trying to understand, maybe, because I think Tuskys and Nakumat were family-owned businesses. And somehow, maybe just tell us, shed more light on probably how probably they failed.
I don't know if they failed because of something to do with their shareholders' agreements or things like that. I know there were some disputes, especially for, was it Tuskys or Nakumat? Don't take my word for it. I think there were some of those disputes. There's one case that I once handled away from that where there were a director had been kicked out of the company and the shares had been forfeited, or rather allotted, transferred to another director. So you see such wrangles because there was no shareholders agreement anywhere. This person was now the remedy for them was just to go to the registrar of companies and try to put up a case for themselves there in terms of how the removal as a director and removal from shareholding was done. In the public domain recently, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but you saw the truthful man walking around the country and saying, we are shareholders. We're shareholders of this government, but there was nothing written, or if there was something written, he admitted it himself, there was nothing written. He believed the guy, in his partner, and then they fell out. So you find you begin with a common intention. As you grow, you find that the behavior of the shareholder, or this co-founder of mine is not something that I can deal with. And then now the wrangles start to come when you want to separate, and now you start to take a division of the business and start running it on your own. Then this other person is running another division on their own. You don't have a clear way of parting, and I'm not saying the shareholders agreement is just for parting. It's also because sometimes you register a company, and then before, like startups, a lot of startups don't make money until maybe their second year. Some of them make money in their first year, and that's very good, but some don't make money even in their fourth, fifth years. I mean, look at Apple. It didn't make profit for a long time. So our shareholders agreement helps you determine, when we put in capital over the years, how does it vest as shares and how long does it take for these shares to vest. So for example, you can have a cliff period. A cliff period is just a period between the registration of the company and when now individual shares come to be actually yours. So I can register a company with you. Today, and then we say we will only get real shares after 1 year. But then you see on the registration documents, we have to allot shares. Yes. So we need the shareholders agreement so that it says Irene and Angela have agreed they will inject money into this business, and the shares will vest after 1 year, and the shares will vest according to the amount of contribution from each person. Yes. If I found you running Sharia Clinic and I wanted to put in some capital, I'm not a founder. I am a shareholder.
Oh, okay.
You see? So for a founders agreement, it's if you're not bringing in any new shareholders, you can actually just have a founders agreement without a shareholders agreement, because you can have all the details that have to do with the shareholding and how it's allotted and such things. But then now for shareholders, it's every new shareholder in the company will have to sign to adhere to the shareholders agreement. So the main difference is just that the co-founding, you share in the vision and you share in the conceptualization and the ideation of the business. A shareholder can find you along the way and decide they want to be part of your business, and they're going to give you some money for some equity. So you make them a shareholder.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I think now I've understood.
All right.
We can go ahead and talk about compliance in the early stages of our business. So what do we need? Do I need a KRA, compliance with the city, the county council, the licenses? What do I need?
Okay. You need, first, when you register a company, you need to obtain a KRA PIN. And then with the KRA PIN, you need to obtain the NSSF and the NHIF PIN.
Right now, NHIF being
Right now, NHIF being Shafashi. NHIF being that you still get that registration number for the company registration number. What a lot of people don't know is if you don't go to NHIF or NSSF, I think they're still calling it NHIF on the eCitizen portal. Until they change it, I will still call it NHIF. So they usually give you that number upon registration. So you find that if you've registered a company, you automatically have a KRA PIN and you automatically have an NSSF and NHIF number. And you actually need to make contributions, or you need to say that you have 0 employees you're making contributions for. I have seen an instance where NHIF and NSSF mentioned that directors are employees of the company and you need to make payments for them as well. I'm not so sure how that is going so far, but then you need to make sure that annually you're checking your status, whether you're compliant or not. For things like county council licenses, if you're operating a physical premise, you need to have a county council license. You just can't go and open a shop and then start running the shop. County council has to know.
salon. If I'm opening a butchery, as long as I have a physical shop.
Yeah, if you have a physical shop, then you need the county council business premise, like the license, the single operating something. It's called what? It's called an SBP, single business permit.
I'm thinking about, you see, these businesses whereby you're hiring sort of space. Do they also need, like, if I'm running a business, I'm selling this artifacts and probably don't have space, then I'll go to town and look for a place. So who's getting the permit? Myself or the physical, the one with the physical?
The one with the physical shop is the one who will get the permit. But then you'll find that if you wanted to go to a bank and get a facility, they will ask you for that business permit from Nairobi County if you're in Nairobi. So first, for a business permit, you need to have a physical location, because you'll need to give them either a plot number or a building name somewhere where your business is operating from. So in that case, if you're taking up a shelf or renting space,
it's actually a shelf for a rental.
Yeah, then you really don't need the SBP, unless now the shop doesn't have it and you want to safeguard yourself, because county council will come in and they'll carry everything. Yeah, so the person with the physical shop is the one who gets the business permit.
All right. We can probably now move to employees, partners, engagement contract.
Oh, wait, before we move away from compliance, there is now the early stages. That's just what we've mentioned, is just taking the certificates. There's the renewals and the filings that you do every year. So there's the KRA filing that you need to do for income tax. And if you're registered for VAT, you need to file VAT monthly. If you have employees and you're paying payee, you need to file it monthly as well.
On what day? Is it every 20th?
Yeah, payee is 20th or 9th. Payee, I'm not sure about those dates, but VAT and payee is, one of them is 9th and the other one is 20th. Yeah, so you need to be sure to file those things. And even if you haven't sold anything, if you have VAT, you must file that in your return.
Could you talk about TCC, tax compliance certificates?
Yes.
Yes, what is that?
So a tax compliance certificate is just a document that shows that you have paid up your taxes and you don't owe the Kenya Revenue Authority anything. So a TCC is usually generated when you have updated all your returns. So you can't get a tax compliance certificate if you have not filed a monthly VAT return or you haven't filed your annual income tax company returns. So the income tax company returns are what you file at the end of the year, at the end of, like now for 2024, from January to December 2024, you need to file before 30th of June 2025. So that income tax and the VAT compliances and the pays and the whatnots, if you're up to date with that, then you're able to generate your tax compliance certificate. Then there's also some returns that you file with the registrar of companies. A lot of people miss out on this. The returns that you file with the registrar of companies is just to show the position of the company at the end of the year. So it shows who the directors are, it shows the location of the company, it shows who the shareholders are, it shows if there have been any changes in shareholding within the year, it shows your indebtedness, like the debts there.
The company.
Yeah, and such things. And this one you file every year, the day you registered the company. So they fall due on the day you registered the company. So if today is 15th of March and it's when we registered the company, then as at today, our returns are due and we need to file them with the registrar of companies. This is usually done on eCitizen and you get a fine of 500 shillings every year you don't file. So people need to remember that on top of the KRA returns, because when you ask somebody, in practice, when I ask somebody, did you file returns? They're like, oh, KRA, yes. But then you find they haven't filed the company returns for 15 years and you're wondering, what is this?
And does the government really want us to know? Probably that's where the items was the story. Yeah, I think they want us. I think they prefer it under wraps so that they get you.
Yeah, so that they get you. But then you see why you need to go to a lawyer.
Oh, yes. So you need to see us.
Yeah, that's why you need to go to a lawyer, because you will find that it's in the act, it's in the Companies Act that you need to submit those returns annually, but then it's not as publicized as the way KRA reminds you every year to do to file their returns. Yes, so it's up to you to be diligent and to remember to file your returns. So engage a lawyer, actually. Yeah.
Thank you for that. As you spoke, I remembered beneficial ownership before we go to the contracts.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that, maybe in brief?
Yes. So beneficial ownership is just a way of the government knowing who is really behind the company.
Is that a way of lifting the corporate veil?
I'd say kind of. In the sense that I think they implemented the beneficial ownership laws to find out who was trading with the government in government tenders and such things. Because you find a lot of civil servants and a lot of politicians and all of those have companies registered under proxies. So I own 100% of the shares. I mean, you guys saw in the NYS scandal, it was a person who works in a salon who was a owner of a company. So this corruption things is what it is, a way of lifting the veil. Actually, it is a way of
the exceptions to the corporate
the beneficial ownership, though. It's just a requirement for the business to keep a register of who really owns the business and in what percentages. So if you look at the beneficial ownership forms, it asks you something to do with voting rights. It asks you something to do with shareholding, asks you something to do with appointment of directors, so and control, whether it's indirect or direct. So most of the times you find that you're asked for that beneficial ownership form, and it has to be up to the last person. By person, I mean human person, not company, because a company is a person as well. Yes. So up to the last person that owns the company. So you might find if I want to do a lot of shoddy activities, I will have many shell companies I have a company owning a company owning a company owning a company. So what I'm required to do in beneficial ownership declaration is I'm supposed to say now who owns all these companies, who is the shareholder behind them, who's the person, the real person behind all of this. Yeah. And for this, any new business needs to declare beneficial ownership. If there's a change in that, like for example, the person whose shares I'm holding in a company has transferred them to somebody else or has transferred that interest to somebody else, I need to declare the change of beneficial ownership. For companies that were not registered after they made the requirement, this is 2021, after they gave the requirement to register for beneficial ownership, you need to check now because there's a fine of, I think, 50,000 shillings.
Wow.
50,000 or more. Yeah, for not declaring beneficial ownership. So if you have a company that was registered before 2021, you need to check. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Now let's go to the contracts and the clauses. What needs to be there in terms of employees, partners, suppliers engagement, all that?
Yeah. So you have registered the business and you want to start operating.
Yes.
Where do you start? If you're not doing the work yourself, you need to hire people to do the work for you. If you've opened a shop in town and you're looking for a shop attendant, a lot of us have the tendency to just go and look for our cousin from Ushago and tell them, come to my shop, come to my shop and, be the shop attendant. There's nothing documented about it. And then you find that when they steal some money from you is when now you realize you did not protect yourself in any way. This person can easily say, but you didn't employ me. Did you? Can you tell people where we agreed that you have employed me?
Anakuruka kiesu.
Kipetero. So an employee contract is very, very important for you to have, and you need to consider the labor laws. So you need to make sure that when you give an employee a contract, on top of telling them how much you're paying them and the number of days they're coming to work and where they need to report and all the conditions that you're giving them to work, you need to also make sure that you're giving them leave days. You need to also mention that they're entitled to sick leave.
When you talked about sick leave, I know we'll still continue, but there's a current that is going on. I think for the people who at least watch news and look at current affairs, there's a lady, I think she's Nigerian, and she was working for a telecommunications company here in Kenya. And I think they had refused to give her leave, and she died in her home. And she was alone. She had not gone back to. So leave days, sick leave, they're very important.
It's very, very
It's vital. It can be the difference between life and death for employees. So, and if you're an employer out there, please take labor laws very seriously. Otherwise, lawyers will come after you.
It's true. It's true. Lawyers will come after you because you see, if you're not telling your employees that they're entitled to 7 days paid leave, and you're not telling them they're entitled to more days of unpaid sick leave, then you're not doing them justice, You also need to consider the environment in which you're putting your employees. I think it's the OSHA regulations, the occupational hazard regulations that talk about you need to provide water.
Oh,
You guys don't know that.
I'm learning as well. To provide water for your employees.
Yeah, and sanitary conditions, good sanitary conditions and all of that. We disregard that all the time. And we think that because, your shop is clean and all of that and your employee can buy water, they're all good and there's nothing else. So you need to be very considerate of such things. You also need to consider to pay for this person. You need to consider paying for SHA now, previously NHIF. You need to consider paying for that. And NSSF as well. So don't employ people and then deny them their rights under the law just because they don't know. Just because they don't know. And even you not knowing is not a defense.
Yeah, ignorance of the law
is not a defense. Yeah.
Tell us about suppliers engagement, what contract you
and
need.
partners.
And partners.
Yeah. Okay.
How does a supplier's contract look like?
Okay, so a supplier's contract is basically guiding on what services or what goods they're giving you, how they're delivering what they're selling to you, the conditions, the payment terms, like payment is 50% upfront, 50% after the service. It needs to have a remedy for if none of this, one of the conditions that you have set out there is not met. And then you also need to consider dispute resolution clauses.
Oh yeah, that is very important. We'll come to yes.
Yeah, you need to consider dispute resolution clauses. For people who are getting IT services,
IT guys, yes.
people who are getting IT services, say you told somebody to build your product for you. So your product is a software or software based, right? And you're getting a developer to build it for you. You need to consider who owns the intellectual property.
Right.
Because you will find a developer has sent you their draft contract and you have not read it, you just signed, and it says anything that person develops is their intellectual property, which leaves you where? With nothing.
Right.
Yeah, which leaves you without your proprietary.
I've seen that a lot in the creative industry, music and all that. And I think Nonini went to court. It's also in the public domain. He went to court and he challenged something and I think there was someone using his music or something. Yeah. So and he got then damages. He was compensated.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And then now there's another thing that businesses don't look at, but it's very crucial, partnerships.
Oh, yeah.
So partnerships and strategic partnerships at that can be very...
There's a difference.
Okay, or it's the same thing, only that a strategic partnership is something that you have thought through.
Okay.
You have thought through. I can partner with you for anything. A strategic partnership it's there to either give me more income, to give me more visibility, to offer me a service that I previously would have paid for and now they're doing it for me for free or something like that. So it's just strategic in that it positions you at a higher level than you would have been without that partnership. Okay. But it's a partnership nonetheless. They're very crucial for businesses that are starting out. You might find that when you get into a partnership, you reduce some of your operational costs because you can have an exchange that is quid pro quo. Like when I give you my legal services and then you, let's say, what do you do? Let's say you're a marketing person. We can actually be in a partnership where we exchange value, like we barter value of the things that we specialize in.
So that's strategic partnership.
Okay, it's just that. Okay, I've just said strategic is just a term.
Oh, it's like
it's just a term.
The partnerships say no and
okay. A partnership is not. Now you remember we had said there's a partnership as a registered,
like an LLP here.
Yeah, like an LLP. Now we're talking about business that is already registered and wants to partner with another business, registered business, or yes, or a person, a consultant or something like that, or an influencer, but then the partnership is for mutual value. So mutual value is either money or anything else that drives growth in the entities involved.
Okay.
Or growth for the parties involved. So in a partnership, again, people just need to put things down in writing. A lot of us get into gentlemen's agreements for partnerships, which is a ill-advised move. You need to be very clear. This is the scope of our partnership. If this partnership leads to an agent or, an agency relationship or something like that, you need to be clear if this partnership gives the other party a right to transact on your behalf. I think that's an agency relationship. But then you also need to be clear on partnership activities, any contributions to the partnership activities, monetary, resource-wise. You need to be clear on that. You need to be clear on when the partnership ends, if it's ending. You need to be clear on terms of renewal, if you're renewing that partnership. You need to be clear on who owns any products or services developed during the partnership. So if you own them 50-50, in the partnership ends, what happens? So everything that you envision in a partnership, just put it down in writing.
Okay.
Put it down in writing. And of course, never forget, dispute resolution clauses are very, very, very important.
Now, before you move on to the last question, you can summarize for us the clauses to look for in or to consider in the contracts now. I think we've talked about it, but now to summarize to our viewers.
Okay. Of course, the parties, the clauses with the parties, who you are, your addresses. Then you need to have the scope of work in any contract. So we need to be very clear on what is being done and what is not being done. To be clear on the term, how long this contract is lasting. You need to be clear on compensation or payments or fees, depending on the type of contract, the money aspect of it. You need to be very clear on that. You need to have clauses that protect your intellectual property. You need to have clauses that talk about confidentiality or information that you're sharing or exchanging with
the NDAs.
Yeah, the
non-disclosure agreement.
Yes, you need to have those in the contract. You need to have a contract on liabilities and indemnity.
Okay, who's liable for what?
Yes, who's liable for what. And then now the indemnity one is how the other party can restore you to your previous position in case of certain issues that may arise. Then you need to have the dispute resolution clause.
That's the main one. I want you to...
Yes, you need to have the dispute resolution clause. You need to be able to agree with the party that you're entering into contract with, how you're going to solve any arising issues. Are you going to go into mediation? Are you going to go into arbitration? Are you going to go through the courts?
Or a baraza?
No? I mean, you can have negotiations.
Not to the chief.
Yeah, we can have negotiations at the chief's office. I mean, if it's in their contacts.
Even the chief. Yeah, don't disregard them. They do a good job. Yeah.
Oh, I was once taken to a chief. By an employee, guy.
Wazee wa msaada. I don't know, they're called elders or something.
Maybe domestic disputes. But then if it's a local business, I mean, if it's operating within a certain locality and there's an issue, then definitely wazee wa nyumba kumi is
so ADR before you go to now
courts,
because courts are very time consuming and very expensive. The first lawyers, of course, we'd want you to go to court because that's our bread and butter.
For me, because I've worked I've been an entrepreneur for a while. My legal advice is always to look for alternative ways to resolve that dispute.
You're taking our job.
I'm taking your jobs, but it's because I'm not a practicing lawyer. So I want my fellow entrepreneurs to know that there's definitely an alternative to the courts, because we all tend to just rush to court, and you want to...
Especially the small claims courts.
Small claims now is flooded.
It's very flooded.
Yes, it's really flooded. You're going there and you're finding dates, I don't know, but look for alternative ways to resolve disputes and have those clauses in your contracts. Employment contracts, supplier contracts, and partnership contracts. Just have a clause that talks about how you will resolve those disputes.
Now to our final question. I expressed this with a lot of sadness. I would have loved for us to continue. Anyway, tell us about financing and available options to fund businesses. What are the financing and available options? Do we go to banks? How do we fundraise? How do we get money?
Okay, so for people who are getting into SMEs, a lot of people spend their savings and get facilities from banks. When you're getting a facility from the bank, you need to be creditworthy. So
what does creditworthy mean? CRB? If I'm on CRB?
If you're on CRB, it's less likely. If you have negative credit listing, it's likely that you will be denied the facility you're looking for. So for small businesses and micro enterprises and medium enterprises, micro enterprise is just the smaller version of a small business. Most people just use savings. You get money from friends and loans from banks and such things. There's now the investor options and the grants as well. So I see a lot of startups going for the grants and for the equity investments and such things. So equity investment and grants is, a grant is somebody giving you money without getting a stake in your company. So they don't have any attached strings. And all you need for this is usually a solid business concept, and you need to have impact. So it can be environmental impact, it can be social impact as well. And then you also need to have, grants can be for new businesses, they can be for older businesses and whatnot. All you need to do is to align with the objectives of the people who are giving you the grant, of the companies that are giving you grants. You can find grants listed on LinkedIn, multiple grants.
There are very many.
Yes. Small business owners complain a lot that they don't have capital. And they don't go looking for grants. You don't go looking for organizations that work with small businesses and enable you and connect you to capital. For startups, most of them go to investors. So investors in the sense venture capitalists now. In the sense that the person will invest in your idea, but then they will get some stake in the company. And when you're doing that now, that is another long procedure. And I think to secure a spot in the podcast again, we would be talking about financing.
Yes. Yeah, in depth.
So we will be talking about financing in depth. But then we can look at, because when you come to venture capital, there's a lot involved. There's term sheets, there's looking at how your business is, like the documentation in your business, and you have to have something called a data room. So in the data room, they will check your accounts, they will check your minutes for meetings, they will check your shareholders, they will check everything that your business has been doing. They will be looking at that when trying to get into your business and give you money for shares. So I'd summarize the financing as personal financing. This is through savings, friend loans and such things. I'd also say grants. I'd say financing from banks through loans. And then now I'd say venture capital is another source of financing. So there's several ways people can raise money to run their operations.
Wow, it has been very eye-opening and insightful. Probably you can now give us your closing remarks and tell us something just to end the show.
Okay. Thank you for your time, everyone. We hope you start strong with the tips that we've just shared, and we hope that you found the episode insightful and that you found some practical things that you can use when trying to start your business or in your initial stages of operation.
Probably tell us what will be happening on 28th.
On the 28th of March this year, we have our mental wellness club launch. It's called the Conscious Minds Club. It's designed for young professionals to help us keep in touch with our mental health as we try to progress in our careers. It's in partnership with the Conscious Works Kenya and the Mental Wellness Association of Kenya, and it's open to everyone. It's absolutely free. It's at the Nairobi Garage, the Promenade. This is on Spring Valley. This is in Spring Valley, and we're looking forward to having you.
Thank you. And as our custom is, we give shots to our very well able presenters. So here's your shot, written Sharia Clinic in mustard.
Yeah.
Then we can read out our mantra together. I hope you're capturing everything, serving you legal insights in the simplest of ways. So that has been us together, me and Irene. It has been very interesting. I have honestly learned a lot. I think I was also, again, taking mental notes, and I'll have to go back to this again and also learn and read as much. So thank you for coming. I am very impressed, and I will definitely have another session with you. So that's it for today's episode. See you on the next one. Thank you. Bye. God bless.
Bye-bye.